So I have 3 affirmations that are taped to my wall. One is a personal one about the relationships I hold most dear. One is about my work, and then one is about my health. And I say that to myself every day just to remind myself and have gratitude for those 3 main buckets in my life. Because when I feel gratitude, that's able to snap me out of my OCD loops and ground me in really what is.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success.
This is a topic that I think has been on the mind of anyone who is a sports fan and has seen the rise of women's sports and women athletes over the past few years become more and more prominent. So I'm really thrilled to have a conversation today with Jamie Mittelman, Flame Bearers. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation. Yeah. I see that you have a master's in public administration. My undergrad was in public administration. So I want to unweave this story of how you got to the point of realizing this was your mission. Sure. It's kind of funny. I just like to own it. This was not the plan. I was not planning on being an entrepreneur. I was in graduate school. I had done back-to-back graduate schools. I'd done an MBA, and then I was getting a master's in policy. And I was planning to work in CSR supply chain, so corporate social responsibility, supply chain management, vastly different. And I wanted to do an internship with the International Olympic Committee. I had been pitching them for the last 6 months saying, hey, you're doing a lot of incredible work around gender equity, around diversity, equity, inclusion, but nobody knows about it because it's buried in an ugly report on your website that nobody's going to read. Let me help tell the world all the awesome stuff you've already done, that you've already invested in. And there was some excitement and interest, and then COVID happened. And the world was turned completely upside down. And I said, well, I'm not just going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs. I'm going to go do the work that I actually wanted to do. So I applied within the Harvard ecosystem. That's where I was getting a master's at the time, and said, I'm going to tell these stories on my own. 5 years later, this is my full-time job. So we have now expanded into a full-time media production company. We tell stories of the best women athletes in the world, and we tell them in 3 ways. So video production, podcast, live events, all with the goal of celebrating these incredible women and telling their stories in their words.
Like any industry, women athletes are affected by the same things. We've seen the stories of when they get married, when they start having children, if that's the path they go down, and how that can really, unfortunately become a burden. In the corporate world, you see maybe they get overlooked for promotions, they get, relegated to certain types of jobs. When it comes to Olympic athletes, it could mean they lose sponsors, they have to figure out childcare if they're going to participate. So I'd love to hear some of the ways that this platform has really helped uplift and champion these women and some of the things that you've seen come out of it.
Absolutely. And I could talk about this literally all day.
I love it.
So we exist because there's not enough coverage of female athletes, and the coverage out there is not good enough. So there's both a quantity and a quality problem. If you take a look at the sports media landscape as a whole, 85% of that goes to male athletes. So I like to name the fact that I think sports media coverage as a category is very much a misnomer. I think that's male sports media coverage if 85% of that goes to a group of people. Of the 15% of women who are getting covered, the vast majority are white, able-bodied women from North America who play soccer and basketball. Now, hey, I'm not going to knock that. That is me. I played soccer in college for a little bit. I am a white, able-bodied woman. However, we are missing so much. We can broaden our aperture of who is being featured. What about brown and black athletes? What about athletes playing less popular sports like rugby, like badminton? What about para athletes? So adaptive athletes who are playing wheelchair tennis. Those athletes deserve to have their stories being told. And right now we're focusing on a very, very narrow portion of the pie. So that's the quantity issue. There's also a serious quality issue with women's stories being co-opted. I think a very clear example of this is when individuals have their stories taken from them. This is very common in the para community in particular, where athletes are often portrayed with the pity brush. These are athletes who are world-class athletes. They are the best in the world at what they do, and they're often portrayed as sources of inspiration because of their disability, whether or not they want that to happen. If that storyline even resonates with them. We see this happening with Black and brown athletes always, having their stories fall into specific tropes. Yeah. We see this with women being paired against each other, be it Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Whether or not that's actually true, both of them been like, what are we talking about? Let's just focus on basketball. So there's the real quality issue with women's narratives being taken out of their control. So what we do is we exist to tell her story in her words. And there's a real need. And we found that our community is growing really quickly. So we have community members, and I think we're up to 55 countries around the world. And we have found that mothers, daughters, fathers, coaches are reaching out to us saying, hey, thank you for showing these stories because now so-and-so believes they can do it too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. I'm just thinking, I was mentioning the ICL Foundation and Academy before we jumped on, and we actually have a male student who is, a wheelchair athlete, and he is in Australia right now, but he has won the US Open, Yeah, he's amazing,
So cool.
and remarkable, and we need more variety in our athletes. Not to start, obviously he's a male athlete, so he will get a little more press, but also really particularly in what you're doing to show women, to show girls, to show different abilitied people that they can do this. And that is a dream. And the fact that you can serve as such a source of inspiration is amazing. So I want to backtrack a little bit because I know you did some work in Bangladesh. You've worked with a lot of media companies. How did that come about? Was that part of your master's program? Was it something else that you just wanted to participate in? And how did that background help you develop Flame Bearers? Because obviously you had wanted to do something very different for your career, but with what you do, you have to have a certain skill set. You have to understand journalism, production, editing, or at least surround yourself with a really amazing team.
Sure. So my passion and the thing that I have been committed to since day one has been working with women, girls internationally. That is what lights me up. That is what gets me out of bed every day. My career has largely been a journey of deciding how I want to do that. My first job out of college, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. So I moved to Bangladesh. I worked at the first liberal arts school for girls in Asia. And I worked with students from 12 different countries who spoke 27 different languages. And I did that because I saw education as the key to empowering women and to letting them have the lives that they want. And I have nothing but the best things to say about teachers. But what I realized during my time there was I wanted to reach more people. I wanted to reach more than the 12 students in my classroom. And I quickly saw media as a tool to do that. I think nowadays we often hear about media as a negative thing. It's as a way to twist people's mind. It's as a source of misinformation and disinformation. And yes, that is absolutely true. What I would counter that with or say yes and to is it can also be a tool that can be leveraged for good. It can also be a platform that raises awareness, that opens people's mind, that can bring additional perspective into people's homes, that can make them think more broadly and more expansively about the world. So my career, basically starting off as a teacher, realizing that I wanted to go into media working with women and girls led me to create this first media production platform for women in sports internationally because no one was doing that. And I was still like jumping up and down. I'm beating this bandwagon day in and day out because we need more people who are supporting women athletes in the US, but also internationally. What it means to be a female athlete in the US is vastly different than what it means to be a professional athlete in Chile, in Afghanistan, in South Africa.
And I think all of their experiences are super valid and super interesting. And I think we can take something away from each of them.
Yeah. The commonalities in the passion, right, for what they're doing. But then obviously, depending on where you are in the world, there are different issues affecting women.
Absolutely. And that's something that we've heard time and time again. And it's, that is a challenge of the market right now is there's this tendency to paint in broad strokes that all athletes' stories are the same, that all female athletes' journeys are the same. And what I would say to that is, I had the opportunity to work with Masama Alizada from Afghanistan, and she had to dress up as a man to get on her bike every day. And she had to ride with a man in front of her and a man behind her, and cars would go by her. And if they realized she was not, in fact, a man, they would verbally assault and physically assault her. That is not the experience of a professional female bike rider in the US. And that is not comparing them. That is just saying, hey, these are very different experiences. There's room for everyone at the table.
What challenges have you faced? Because this all sounds fantastic, right?
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who wouldn't say this is an amazing platform. But I know as women founders and as a woman who's trying to propel women, globally who are athletes, there have to be special challenges that you face, whether it's funding, getting recognition, finding the right platforms.
Yeah, definitely. Three main challenges that I am continuing to struggle with. The first is a understanding that women's sports are not a charity case, that this is a rethinking of how we think about our society values women and women's sports. Right now, we are coming to a point where people are realizing that there really is a business case for women's sports. This is not a charity case. This is not something that you give money to because you want to feel good. You invest in it because it is a smart move. And kind of coming from that, there's a lot of challenges in terms of convincing people of why they should invest because they think that they are doing it from either a DEI perspective, a CSR perspective, a philanthropic perspective. And I have been really hard and adamant that, sure, you could do that, but it's also just smart business. So that's number one. I would say number two, and this is something that I don't think a ton of entrepreneurs talk about, it's really lonely. I think it's really challenging to go and start something on your own where you're the one who has to create the infrastructure. You don't have a water cooler anymore I can just walk up to and talk to my colleagues. So that is a personal challenge that I have had to actively combat. And the third thing, and this is something that I think I have done a very good job of, is building my community, is building my network. As an entrepreneur, it's been really important to surround myself with people who have skill sets that I do not have. And I think it's really important to be really honest with yourself and say, hey, Jamie, I'm really good at A, B, and C, but I am really bad at D, E, and F. And therefore, I'm going to build a advisory board. I'm going to build a team of people whose strengths are my weaknesses. And I think that's one of the things that most people don't do. Most people tend to gravitate towards people who think like them, who are very similar to them, who enhance their strengths. And I think one of the things that I have been successful at and encourage other entrepreneurs to do is, yes, that feels great to reiterate your strengths, but really thinking through where are your holes and then plugging those holes with people who are better than you at your areas of weakness.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be hard to do that because you might choose somebody who's a friend, right? Or somebody that you know of that you know a little bit, you think that you know enough to hire them or to work with them. I've experienced this definitely. And by the look on your face, I think you probably have too.
Definitely.
How do you overcome those challenges? Because it does take time to find the right team that's really going to help propel the mission forward and be just as passionate as you.
Yeah, it's really challenging. I've definitely made those, I wouldn't call them mistakes, but perhaps missteps. And I think what I realize is that it's your team. You're just as strong as your team. So I think I'm always now a little slower on the draw to make a hire, to bring someone on board, because I think that there's a potential downside there. So I would say being really intentional about those choices. And then also, one thing that I've learned is having commitments be for shorter, concrete, agreed upon periods of time, as opposed to an indefinite, yes, we would love to work with you. And the reason for that is because it's a trial for both parties. Your friend could come back and say, hey, Jamie, I hate working with you. And, just as easily as I could say, this isn't a fit. It goes both ways. So I think agreeing to less of a long-term opportunity and more of a short-term trial period gives both parties more flexibility to reassess and evaluate if it's working for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, because I've been on the other side where I've been invited into working with people and thought, oh, we vetted each other really well, and then
Right.
and have a long-term contract and go, wait, this is not the right fit for either of us. So
Totally. And this is something that I struggle with, but having those scary, awkward conversations, if and when you do realize it's not the right fit. Like I've had kind of that icky, yucky feeling in my stomach where I'm like, I know this isn't right. I'm going to kick the can down the road. I'm not going to do anything about it right now. But I think where I am today is trying to actually address those feelings. So when I do realize that it's not a fit, understanding why, and then approaching the other party and say, hey, I'm feeling this. Are you feeling this too? Because sometimes I've noticed that when you just give voice to something or create the space, oftentimes you're not, feeling that feeling.
let's talk distribution. You have the podcast, you have social media, but you also have all these amazing videos. Do you have a distribution deal with a Netflix or an ESPN? Is that one of the goals if you don't have one, or do you have your own streaming platform?
So right now we have our own streaming platform. All of our videos are live on YouTube, all podcasting platforms and social. That said, we are in the works with a couple big distributors on some upcoming opportunities. So that is absolutely a top priority for us this coming year. So if anyone listening has any recommendations or suggestions, would absolutely welcome that. We are also working on a number of different projects that would hopefully be sold directly to different streaming networks.
Fantastic. Yeah. Because I can just see that helping propel your work even further.
Exactly. I think the way I've been thinking about this from a growth perspective is, number one, build out the community, focus on the content, and then phase two is distribution. So no one's going to buy something unless they can see the product and have proof of concept. We've done that. Check. Now let's make sure we can bring it to more people.
Yeah, fantastic. What was the first step in this process? Who was the first athlete that you decided that you wanted to lift up?
First step was really crystallizing what Flame Bearers was going to be. And this took months. It sounds silly, it sounds trite, but it was really important for me to come in with a clear mission statement, come in with a clear vision, come in with clear differentiators of, here's what's in the market right now. Here's how we're going to be different. Here's how we're not going to be that. Here's how we're going to do something with our own little twist on it, if you will. One thing that I do like to call out, because this has been an important part of my own learning journey, before I started Flame Bearers, one of my advisors challenged me. It was originally just going to be women Olympians from around the world. And she said, hey, Jamie, what about Paralympians? And this was kind of a aha moment to me where I was like, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. But if I hadn't done those months of pre-work and talked to people who had been in this space before, I probably would not be interviewing. Half of the athletes we interviewing would not be Paralympians. So I like to just name that because we all have blind spots, and this was one of my blind spots. And I think that's important to just acknowledge. The first athlete that I interviewed was Nikki Nieves. She was actually the flag bearer for Team USA during the past Paralympics. She's a two-time Paralympic gold medalist and just a rock star of a human being. I think Nikki is an incredible role model. She's very outspoken about Black Lives Matter, about ableism, and her hopes for the Paralympic movement moving forward. But it was definitely one of those conversations where, here I am. I am not an elite athlete, talking to some very big athletes, and I have to come across, at least in the beginning, as calm, cool, and collected, kind of a fake it till you make it moment. I think I've gotten to a much better place now that we've worked with about 350 different Olympians and Paralympians. But in the beginning, every single time I had to kind of pinch myself and do some meditation before my calls.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I have to flag, I love how intentional you were, because I do think so many people start businesses and they don't do the work. I'm having PR clients, I always take them back to the brand of your mission, vision, values, purpose.
Yeah.
Your differentiators, all of those different things that if you have a strong foundation, even if it takes longer, your company is going to thrive so much better and so much longer than you figuring out that you didn't do that work and going backwards. So I applaud you for being really intentional, taking the time you needed to launch this properly.
Thank you. It's definitely in the beginning when you are excited and revving and ready to go. It feels prolonged, but I think to your point, it has paid off in spades in hindsight.
Yeah. And what about funding? Are you getting grants? Do you have corporate sponsors? Are you looking at it more like, getting venture capital or family offices?
Yes. So historically, we've been funded from a fellowship and a grant-based model. We are transitioning to a sponsorship model where corporations have the opportunity to sponsor either individual pieces of content, seasons, or events. We're also just beginning to think about VC capital as well and family offices.
Okay, fantastic. Oh my gosh. Where do you see yourself going in the next 1 to 5 years? I know distribution on major networks and platforms is one thing.
My hope is that when people think about Flame Bearers, it is the go-to storytelling platform for the best women athletes in our world. And that means all women athletes in our world of all shapes, sizes, backgrounds, voices, perspectives. One important to just name is we don't do sports reporting, so we're not going to be competing with an ESPN. We're not going to be talking about who is playing who and, what the lineup is. But we do the human interest pieces. So talking about who these women are, what they care about, what their why is, what gets them up every morning. So that's really what I want us to continue to do, but just at a larger scale. And, it's important to me that we maintain that level of trust. Right now, we have a 100% athlete approval rate. That means that every athlete has signed off on and said, yes, we like this. You're not misconstruing my story. And that's really important to us because the whole basis of our work is that we're telling her story in her words. So not losing sight of that key tenet as we grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And besides distribution, obviously you want to get to more athletes, get more funding. What else do you see in the future? Are you going to be writing books? Are you making feature films?
So definitely potential on the book, but right now our main focus is we have a number of video and podcast series that we are producing. We're also hopefully producing our first ever documentary series that we're very excited about. And I can't share too much more about that because we're in the throes of hopefully selling that. We are also doing a lot more in-person and virtual events, bringing these athletes' perspectives live to corporations, live to cities, live to schools, and allowing the athletes to share their perspectives and stories directly with people. What's really cool about that is then people can ask questions directly of the athlete. So those are kind of 3 things that we're really excited about for the next couple of years.
Amazing. I do have to ask this question. We have a new administration in the United States. A lot of the initiatives that you're talking about, and you and I hold dear, DE&I, are they're deprioritized, I guess would be the nicest way of saying it. Do you think that's going to have any impact on your work?
Yes, I do. It is something that I am worried about, and I do think about a lot. The intention that I have and the way that I have been thinking about it is as potentially some of the programming that I think many women and many individuals have benefited from potentially get stripped away, that the need is going to become that much more important. And that maybe spaces that were historically supported by governmental funding are likely going to have to turn towards privately funded. So I am hopeful, and this is potentially me being naive and optimistic and perhaps a bit opportunistic, that as some of those programs are defunded, that investors, that individuals who believe in those values are going to be looking for additional ways to continue to support this meaningful work. And we're one of those companies out there that are putting in the work day in and day out to make sure that those voices are continuing to be put on the vanguard of every day.
Yeah. Fantastic. You talked a lot about your process and starting the company and the impetus behind it. So what advice would you give to the aspiring entrepreneur? Because my listeners are, mid-career professionals who want to take the entrepreneurial leap, my grad students who want to start their own business instead of go to corporate, as well as a lot of small to medium-sized business owners that may still need to figure out a few pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah. I like to name that I was very much an accidental entrepreneur. I think that there is kind of this misconception that all entrepreneurs have wanted to be entrepreneurs since day one. And yes, that definitely exists for some group of people, but definitely not for all. What I would encourage people to do is to start with their problem. So why do you need to create a business, create whatever it is that you want to? And unless there's a clear problem that you can really articulate, keep going. For me, it's the quantity and the quality issue around women's sports media that we talked about. If that didn't exist, it would be a lot harder for me to make the case that this work was needed. So number one, I'd say is start with clarifying what the problem is, and then think really carefully about how you're going to solve it or do something different or take one step towards getting to a better place. I would also encourage people to build their community and build their network, build their village of people who are going to help them on that journey. So I mentioned how lonely entrepreneurship is. I also mentioned how one of my advisors in my early days challenged me to think more expansively about what flame bearers could be. And I think building that community of individuals around you from day one is really important because they're going to be your ride or die through the ups and downs. And it's not a matter of if that's going to happen. It's a matter of when, because there are ups and downs along this journey. So just being really intentional and purposeful about bringing in those perspectives.
Fantastic. Anything else that I've left out that you think the audience really needs to understand?
I would just say we would love to hear from you. So we are a small but mighty growing community. I mentioned we're in 55 countries now. We've won 23 awards and counting, which we're super excited about, but we're just as strong as the individuals in our group. So if anything I said today resonates, follow us on social, subscribe to our podcast to hear more stories. Or honestly, if you want to find a way to work with me, shoot me a note. My email is jamie@flamebearers.com. I would love to find a way to work with you.
Oh, fantastic. We will, of course, have Flame Bearers linked in the show notes, and the website is phenomenal. Everybody needs to go look at it now. Jamie, do you have a motto, a slogan, a verse, a poem, some words that help you get through every day, even when you're so excited about what you do, but you're hitting a roadblock?
Yeah, this is quite personal, but I have a mantra that I say to myself every morning and every evening, and it's actually taped to my mirror. And this came from a place of wanting to feel gratitude every day. So I have diagnosed OCD, and it very much impacted me growing up. And with that comes an incredible ability to focus and get stuff done. The flip side is it allows me to obsess about things that perhaps aren't true and to ruminate on things that aren't true. So I have 3 affirmations that are taped to my wall. One is a personal one about the relationships I hold most dear. One is about my work, and then one is about my health. And I say that to myself every day just to remind myself and have gratitude for those 3 main buckets in my life. Because when I feel gratitude, that's able to snap me out of my OCD loops and ground me in really what is.
Yeah, amazing. I just really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so excited about what you're doing and all of the passion you have to pour into women athletes around the world and amplify their stories. Jamie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Annika. I really appreciate it. And I love your show.
Oh, thank you. And everybody who's listening to this episode or watching it on YouTube, don't forget to follow Jamie Flamebearers on all social platforms. Check out the podcast and, of course, leave us a rating and review. I'll be back again with another amazing guest in a few days to share their story and their journey. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.